Hey, welcome to Impress the Boss. I'm Catherine.
I'm Laurel.
And I'm Valerie.
And we're here to help you stand out without working overtime. This week's episode on Impress the Boss is all for you bosses. So if you need to catch up from our previous episodes, please go do this. This is a summary of what we've talked about the last couple weeks around the Bobs. The Bobs are our characters that you can find out more about on ImpressTheBoss.com. So today we're going to talk through the last three Bobs that we've been discussing on the show, and we'll talk through some tips for managers and then just summarize and conclude. So we're happy to have you today, bosses. It is really challenging to deal with different types of personalities, and all these Bobs really just are illustrative of what you might encounter on your team, or if you're not a boss, of people that you might encounter that you work with. So today we're going to talk about Bob-Ullet, Bob-Spock, and Bobbie-Two Shoes. So we're going to start with Bob-Ullet. You know, I mentioned that unless you're looking at this visually, the illusion or the alliteration might be a little difficult, but it's really this idea of a mullet, like party or business in front, party in the back, all about looking like you get things done, but could have this lackadaisical spirit about you that could help could cause compromise in your integrity as well. So Valerie, I think you have a couple tips on if you're a manager of someone who's just likes to party, likes to play, how do we get them back on track with that business up front?
Sure. Being a boss for a Bob-Ullet is kind of fun in a way because they are a fun person. So they have a tendency to maybe bring out the fun in you. But if you are a boss, the first tip that we offer is to encourage play and fun, but with the purpose of the end goal of having something to get done, to make sure that there is a purpose, to make sure that the playing and the fun has a reason, actually a rhyme and a reason to go with it. And that is the first tip. The second tip, if you are a boss that oversees a Bob-Ullet, is to help them identify specific goals and also to help them be able to express what their values are. And with that moves into the third tip of being able to have check-ins with the Bob-Ullets and being able to help them see if they are meeting those goals or are meeting the expectations that you have as a boss or a manager. And with that, it will allow you to be able to let them know that you're not checking in on them every year at the end of the year review, that if you have those daily check-ins, it helps them see where they're at and helps them stay on spot on things.
Yeah, I think it's this idea of structure, which doesn't apply to all our Bobs. Some of our Bobs can't stand structure, but definitely for the Bob-Ullet, this structure, progress, tracking, I think is really important just to keep them moving forward.
And I think with a personality with the Bob-Ullet, that when they're able to see that they are meeting some goals and expectations, I think it'll probably help them with their personality traits too.
Yeah.
And just not to be so just go happy all the time.
But you definitely want to keep the fun. You gotta have some of that in there.
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Val. So the next Bob that we talked about was Bob-Spock. And so I'm going to share a couple of tips about that. Bob-Spock is that, deep into tech, deep into Deep Space Nine, and very analytical, problem solver, but can also withdraw relationally from the group as well. And maybe has issues or challenges really communicating because quite honestly, they might be the smartest person in the room. So translating that could be difficult. So if you're a manager of a Bob-Spock, there are a couple things you could do to encourage this type of personality. First, you could encourage relational connection. So maybe they find a key friend in at work that they really relate to. Maybe it's another Bob-Spock. You can pair up a pair of Bob-Spocks.
That's right.
Yeah. So a friend that they can really connect with and maybe help facilitate that introduction. You also could assign in their goals one relational activity a quarter. So once every 3 months that they participate in something that's happening, team activity.
That's great.
That's one idea. Another idea is to maybe have communications training for Bob-Spocks. If they have challenges communicating, could they take a class on how to verbally communicate with others or how to create and cultivate relationships? I think one of the things that Bob-Spocks are good at is verbal communication. So you could also encourage, if they have an idea to, written communication. So if they have an idea, to encourage them to write it down and have, even if it's a 20-page thesis, at least they have a chance to process in a written format, which they might be more likely to excel at. And then the last thing I would say is to give them a problem to solve. So find a huge problem. Find a problem that's going to take them a couple months to sort through. Give it to them to solve. Ask for their ideas, and then have them come back and present solutions to you. So that way their mind, is triggering all these thoughts and ideas. It can really land on this problem to solve. So we like Bob-Spocks, but we gotta draw them out a little bit.
That's
so
right.
There's some ideas around that. And then the last Bob we'll talk about is the Bobbie-Two Shoes, which I related to the most. HR guidebook, Strickler, could be a chameleon, definitely a people pleaser. Brings a lot of relational positivity to the workplace, but do you really know what they're thinking? And then if you know what they're thinking, most likely they might be arguing with you. So how do you balance this dichotomy in their personality?
Yeah. So some good tips that we have for bosses for your Bobbie-Two Shoes that you work with or that are on your staff.
Boss, are you listening?
Yeah, that's right. Catherine's boss, listen in. The first one, and Catherine talked about it, is just, and we've talked about it before in a couple of previous episodes, about safety. So psychological safety. So Bobbie-Two Shoes need to feel like there is a safe space for them to bring their ideas forward and to maybe even argue. So Catherine talked about how, she has a boss who actually invites argument and good, healthy debate. So having an environment where they're safe enough to have that is something that the Bobbie-Two Shoes really appreciate, because they are a people pleaser. So if they're not feeling like they can bring those ideas forward, in a true and authentic way, then they're going to kind of move backward, I guess, or not bring those forward. The second one, which also Catherine talked a little bit about in her example, is that we need to recognize that a quick answer from a Bobbie-Two Shoes is probably a people-pleasing answer and is probably not a response that has been really well thought out and has been, had some time spent to it, but is more of just responding and how they think that you want them to respond. So giving them the time and the space to actually think about their response so that they bring forward a real answer or a real response is a very much appreciated thing for Bobbie-Two Shoes. And the last one, and we've talked about this with a couple, is having clear expectations. Bobbie-Two Shoes, again, because of that people-pleasing piece, need to understand what it is that you're expecting of them and have that be clear for them. So couple good tips for you, bosses of Bobbie-Two Shoes.
Yeah, those are great tips. Yes.
Well, thanks for your time and listening. And hopefully you managers and you bosses, these tips help you just better relate to your team and more effectively communicate and manage and impress your boss as well. So thanks for joining us on this episode. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Hey, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you listening in. If you'd like to learn more about the Bobs, go to impresstheboss.com, where you will see all our Bob characters and hopefully find one that you relate to as well. While you're there, subscribe to be part of our crew and you'll get our free tool download. Also, follow us on social, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook for our daily standout tips. Thanks for joining, and until next time, Bob's out.